exploration. I showed you a geotag photo on Flickr and how that was being used for counter surveillance. But there's another use, and this is somebody I interviewed said that when they go somewhere new that they've never been before, they like to pull up a map of the place, and then they like to look at the pictures that are there. And that having seen the pictures of the place makes them feel more comfortable and safer when they actually go there. So I think that's a pretty compelling, good benefit, assuming it's not a false sense of security, of course. But so maybe you're going to New York for the first time, you're going to a con, and you're wondering, what hotel should I stay at? And so you look around at the map, and you're like, I wonder what the Hotel Penn looks like. Does it have good views? So you can even pull that up. And you might rethink your decision. No, it does not have good views. So to put it all together then, I just went over a couple benefits to geotagging. And I gave you some scariness earlier about what geotagging at the large could result in for an individual person. So for me, and the point of the project and that I'm trying to make is that it's about informed choice. People have a need to connect, right? People want to participate in public. There's no reason we all have to be in this room together. We could just be watching this stream online. But people like to be known. People like to meet people. People like to connect, even over the internet, even in reality. Some people use Yelp. I've heard a story about two different people sitting in a coffee shop who checked in on Foursquare and based on both checking in at the same location decided to chat. Like, those people were in the same, they could see each other. But it wasn't until they used technology to mediate and break the ice that they started chatting. And that, I mean, seems a little strange, but that's good, right? I mean, ultimately, we want to connect, and it's good when people do. So it's kind of, there's this balance or trade-off, and it's really hard to quantify the long-term risk of sharing too much information. It's really hard to get a good sense for it. And my hope by doing this, by taking people's tweets, clustering them, classifying them, and showing them, hey, guess what, is that people at least get a better sense of balance when they're making that decision. But even informed choice isn't perfect. And this came up in an interview I did. And this person is a very technical person, is a social media person. And this is what they said when I asked them about why they were geotagging tweets.
Until you mentioned it just there, I totally forgot that my tweets were being geotagged as well.
So really, like, he went on to say that when he first got the phone, and it's always when people first get the phones, it asks them, and they made the decision to share, but totally forgot. So tweeting, with not even considering that they might be giving away personal information. So tweeting from home, I mean, like, that's a problem, I think, that people are giving away this information without being aware of it. And so what can we do? I mean, I think improving the apps would be a step, right? Most of the apps ask once and then never tell you again. So at least periodically showing you what's going on would make you think about it, right? And would at least trigger that memory that, oh yeah, I did decide to geotag my tweets. Because unless you look for it, I guess you just don't know. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see an improvement in the apps, see more reminders for people, and have people look at what they're doing and think about it. But I get the feeling that it's actually going to get worse before it gets better. I don't know about you guys, but Facebook, I think there are going to be big problems when Facebook turns on geotagging, which it looks like is pending, because I think this was back in May when they originally announced they wanted to do it. And there are a number of reasons. First of all, most people's Facebook accounts are tied to their real identity, so nobody even has to try to figure out who is this person in reality. It's just there. Facebook never deletes anything. They never delete anything. If you delete a photo on Facebook, it's not deleted. They just check, like there's a Boolean in there that says deleted. That's what happens when you delete a photo on Facebook. And they even keep track of your click stream, right? They know whose photos you're looking at. They know whose wall user you're looking at. They just don't delete anything. And so now they're going to have geodata on top of that. And they know your real-life friends graph already. But now they can infer people who you maybe deliberately didn't tell Facebook you know, based on tweeting it or updating your status from the same location. And it goes worse than that, because Facebook, like, does anybody raise your hand if you think Facebook is an ethical company? Right, exactly. So I'll give you an example of why I asked that. There's a BlackBerry app for Facebook that I use. And you can optionally allow it to sync your contacts on your BlackBerry with Facebook, so it'll automatically download the photos of people and put them in or whatever. But so you'd think it would connect to Facebook, get your list of Facebook friends, and sync that on the phone. But you'd be wrong. What it actually does is it takes all of the contacts on your BlackBerry, uploads them to Facebook, and then Facebook comes back and says, oh yeah, this person's on Facebook too, but we're going to remember the rest of them. Or they say, maybe they say that they're not keeping it all, but they may be, right? So even if you deliberately didn't befriend somebody on Facebook, but you have their contact on your cell phone, now Facebook knows that. And they're not upfront about that. And that's the problem with Facebook, is that they're not upfront in general, right? I mean, every time they change their privacy settings, they don't ask for permission. They don't say, hey, guess what, this change is coming. Click here to turn it on. They're just like, hey, by the way, all statuses are now public. You can turn it off. You can figure the site out. And who would be surprised if that's what they do, with the next iPhone, the next version of the iPhone app is just turn geotag on by default. And then you can't make an informed choice because most people aren't even aware that it's happening. So I'm not the only person to worry about these sort of issues. Some other ones that are interesting. PleaseRobMe.com, I think everybody's probably seen. It kind of did the rounds a while back, just taking your Foursquare check-ins and telling people where you're not, which is at home. Your open book is interesting because, again, like I said, Facebook making statuses public without necessarily informing people well, or at least people didn't get informed about it. And so people are updating their status about the status of their DUI conviction and stuff like that. It's terrifying. I Can Stalk You was presented yesterday. It's awesome. It's doing the same with just geotagged photos that you post. Because again, iPhones tend to want to add location data to photos. And you can infer a lot of people, or you can do the same thing I've been doing, but just with their photos. And yeah, so to summarize then, I mean, I think the key point is that, like I mentioned earlier, one tweet is harmless, one geotag is mostly harmless. But once you start generating amounts of data, then people can start making inferences. And you need to be aware of that, and people need to be aware of that. But it's not all bad news. Society reaps a benefit from geotags. Sometimes the users get a benefit. I interviewed one guy who said, I asked him what value he'd ever gotten from Foursquare. And one of his stories was that he woke up one morning hungover and looked through where he checked in from last night and was like, hey, I didn't know I went to that bar. That's awesome. And so there's a personal archive value right there, right? It told him where he'd been, and that's kind of cool. Maybe not great, but cool. And so my final point then that I want to leave you with is 2 years ago at the Last Hope, I went to a talk on Wikiscanner by Virgil Griffith, and he was talking about how there's all this data on the net. He looked at Wikipedia. I've been looking at Twitter, and there are tons of other sources of data that can be aggregated and analysis run. And it's my hope that the people in this room in 2 years will be doing a presentation about some interesting data set that they've mined from the internet and presenting some conclusions for me to see then. So thanks. Any questions? Lights? I think there's a microphone. There we go. How am I doing on battery?
One thing I would mention is that the latest version of the iPhone software does show an arrow in the upper right-hand corner whenever the GPS is feeding the data to an app.
Okay.
Hey, I don't know if you study this at all, but basically, you know how now a lot of people are sending out fake Google searches along with their real Google searches to scramble that. Have you seen anyone doing that with geolocation, saying one day they're in Turkey, one day they're in New York, but clearly every day by their tweets they're at home just to scramble stuff like what you're doing?
I haven't seen that come up in the data set. Actually, one of the slides that I took out, I was going to say step 1, make site that scares people about geotagging, step 2, question mark, step 3, profit, and then step 2 is going to be make an app that lets people lie about where they are and sell it. So I'm sure that we'll start to see people selling Twitter apps that let you just pick a location on a map as to where you're tweeting from. I'm sure help people generate alibis, if nothing else. Any other questions? Okie dokie. Like I said, I'm happy to chat after or demo it after over beer. Yeah.
Just one thing. Where are you going for beer?
I'll tweet. No, I don't. Just come up after, and we'll go somewhere.